This is Rockall. It's a tiny islet located in the desolate expanse of the North Atlantic Ocean. 25 meters wide and 31 meters long, it is home only to a colony of seabirds. You would be forgiven for thinking that not a soul on earth could have the slightest interest in this miserable piece of granite, but oh, would you be wrong? If you haven't heard the outrageous backstory to this tiny island, you're in for a real treat. Nuclear weapons, Cold War espionage, an SAS campout, a Greenpeace invasion, and never-ending disputes over oil and fishing rights, Rockall has quite the story to tell. Rockall is the visible tip of an ancient volcanic reef located 300 kilometers west of Scotland and 700 kilometers south of Iceland. The earliest historical references to Rockall go back as far as the 16th century, but it wasn't until either 1810 or 1811 that the first landing on the rock was made by a small Royal Navy landing party led by Basil Hall. The islet was charted in 1831, and a report in the Irish Times in 1861 noted the abundance of fish in the waters surrounding Rockall. This gives you a hint at where this story is ultimately headed, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. In 1954, the British Army purchased 113 Corporal nuclear-armed tactical missiles from the US, and they wanted to test out their new armaments. The plan was to test fire the missiles from the Scottish island of South Uist. The problem was the flight path went right over Rockall, which was unclaimed territory at that point. The British Admiralty were concerned that the Soviets, being the sneaky types that they were, might claim Rockall as their own in order to set up a spy base. The last thing that the British needed were the Soviets a few hundred miles from their shores spying on their nuclear testing program. And so, during April 1954, Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II ordered the annexation of Rockall. And so Rockall holds the coveted status of being the last territory ever absorbed into the British Empire. Given Rockall's tiny dimensions, making a landing was a challenge in itself. Fortunately, the landing party came prepared with a Dragonfly helicopter. This lowered the 3 Royal Marines and a civilian down onto the only flat ledge of Rockall that could accommodate them. On the 18th of September 1955, up went the Union Jack, and so it was done. Rockall then belonged to Britain. A brass plaque commemorating the auspicious event was cemented into place and intended to serve as a reminder forevermore of who owned that barren tip of rock. Britain's missile tests went ahead, and to the best of everyone's knowledge, the Soviets didn't get any sneak peeks of the goings-on, at least not from the comfort of Rockall Islet. You would think that that is where the drama ends, but alas, the story goes deeper. While the fears of Soviet spying from Rockall had passed, the United Kingdom's interests in exerting its rights of ownership over Rockall became less a matter of national security and more a matter of economics. Under the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea of 1958, the UK claimed a 12-mile exclusive economic zone around Rockall. The United Kingdom decided to go back to Rockall in 1971 to reassert its claim over the territory, as well as to install a light beacon on its pinnacle, which they thought would put an end to any bickering over the question of ownership. The problem was that to do this, the British had to use explosives to flatten the pinnacle of Rockall to accommodate the beacon. The British literally blew the lid off Rockall to make sure it was clear who owned that bad boy. With the installation of the beacon complete, the UK government then passed the Island of Rockall Act in 1972, which incorporated Rockall into Scotland. Other nations nearby have never recognised the UK's claim to Rockall, and Ireland, Denmark and Iceland have all over the years made competing claims over the island. The British thought they were sitting pretty at this point, but saw their hopes dashed when the updated United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea in 1982 stated that rocks which cannot sustain human habitation or economic life of their own shall have no exclusive economic zone. This was a major blow because Rockall is not inhabitable, at least not for humans. Strictly speaking then, Rockall is not an island. At best it's an islet, but in truth, it's really just a rock. The United Kingdom was however not about to throw in the towel on this one, and in an effort to prove that Rockall was habitable, survivalist and former SAS member Tom McLean went to Rockall with the intention of living there for 6 months. He only managed to stay on Rockall for 40 days before calling it quits. It has since become a bit of a sport, with survivalists competing to see firstly who can actually plant their 2 feet on Rockall, and secondly who can stand there the longest before being overcome by the smell of guano. In 1997, 3 members of Greenpeace staged a protest on Rockall against oil exploration in the area. They decided to rename Rockall Waveland and declare themselves a micronation. Greenpeace stuck it out for a whole 42 days, beating out Tom McLean. In any event, the existence of Waveland was short-lived. By 1999, Waveland was no more. By that stage, the United Kingdom kinda had to admit defeat by conceding that Rockall really wasn't a genuine island, as its habitation was not self-sustaining. As such, the UK agreed to classify Rockall as a rock when it signed the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea 3 in 1997. This meant that the UK could no longer claim to enjoy an exclusive economic zone, but still claimed the right to 12 miles of territorial waters around Rockall. In 2010, it was revealed that the plaque first planted on the islet in 1955 was then missing. To this day, nobody knows what became of it, although there are plans afoot to one day replace it, if for nothing but the glory of the former British Empire. Today, the UK, Ireland, Denmark and Iceland all have their hat in the ring fighting for the oil-rich seabed and the waters teeming with fish. The convoluted rules of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea are such that each of these nations apparently has a claim, if not to Rockall itself, at least to some part of the waters surrounding it. Tensions between the UK and Ireland were brought to a head in 2019 when Scotland imposed a ban on Irish fishing vessels in its claimed waters. After Brexit, a Scottish Coast Guard boat even went so far as to board an Irish fishing boat, warning that it had strayed into UK waters and that it should leave. And so the tiny little rock that nobody should care about somehow continuously finds itself the centre of attention. Given the wealth of natural resources at stake, no doubt the outrageous goings-on around Rockall will continue well into the future.